Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so if someone in YouTube and Facebook could verify if you can hear me, will be awesome. Well, for now, as a quick introduction, today we will start I would say one of the most important, oh, thanks, one of the most important topics for the interview. Please pay attention, take notes, and review this topic later because it will be really useful for you. And well, the topic is about how to interview. And in this topic, we will talk about how is interview. The next Friday, we will have a mock demo, a mock interview demo, where you can see. Obviously, it's not a real interview, but a demo of what could you expect in a mock interview. So obviously, you are will be really nice if you can attend that lesson. If not, you can review it later. We have another mock interview demos in our YouTube channel. You can review it later if you want. But in the Friday's lesson, you could also make your questions about, well, something that you understand, or why the interviewer make that question, or why the interview we clarify something, etc. So, Gober, do you want to start, or we wait a few minutes
Yes.
more? Gober?
Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Let's begin.
Nice.
Okay, so hello again. My name is Roberto, but everyone knows me as Gover. So today we're going to discuss how to interview. Basically, we have been talking about uh, how to create your resume, how to deliver your resume, and how are the like general aspects of the interview, but we haven't discussed how one of the main important parts of the interview is, right? We don't know yet how to ace the real interview, or how is the interview that you're going to perform in your real uh, candidacy. So today we're going to discuss this. An interview, it basically like has different parts that are like very fixed independently for company to company, and there is like a general schema to how to ace, how to answer the questions that you are going to be asked in this interview. So uh, let's review it. Next one, please. Okay, so basically the general interview has three main parts. The main part, or the first one, is the behavioral questions. Basically, I'm going to explain each of these parts in the following slides, but just to be aware that I'm not going to discuss a lot of like topics right now. The behavioral question is basically all about you, your projects, your experience, leaderships, programming language, and all that stuff. After that, you're going to be asked about a coding interview. Well, in this case, a coding problem. Here you need to do, well, they are going to give you a problem, and you need to solve the problem as fast as possible and as correct as possible. And at the end of your interview, you can ask whatever you want to your interviewer. And this is a great option if you are like very curious about specific parts of what the company is doing. Basically, you have one of their engineers in front of you, or in a call, and you can clarify a lot of questions. So you might be wondering, well, okay, so there are three parts, right? And those three parts are going to happen in an interview that is going to last 16 minutes. 16, I'm sorry. And that's why you need like to perform in a certain way in each of the parts of the interview. So the first part, that is the behavioral question. Next one, please. Okay, the behavioral. So basically, this part it only lasts like 5 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes is like an overkill, I would like to say, because the behavioral questions, you need to ask these kind of questions like as fast as possible because you want to get like a little more time to solve the next part of your interview, that is the coding part. And okay, now you know that you need like to answer like in a very quick way, but what are you going to answer? Well, there are different kind of questions. The first one is tell me about yourself. Okay, what is tell me about yourself? Like the sentence says, you need to give a brief description about all your professional career, only your professional career, because they're not interested in like, oh well, I like to play football and I go to cinema with my friends. No, no, no. You can like give a little bit of that part at the end of your professional career to sound not like a robotic person, but that is up to you. I wouldn't say that I would like to sound like too robotic, but just give like a general description about your hobbies. For example, I like dancing and that's all, right? And how you need to answer, tell me about yourself. Well, basically there's a structure. The structure is you need to begin to describe what are you doing right now. So for example, if you're not working, you could say that I'm studying. If you're working, well, I'm working on or working doing something like I don't know. And after that, you need like to describe what you have done in the past, beginning for your oldest previous work experience or projects. For example, if I used to work at, I don't know, Instagram as my first internship, I will say, oh, I used to be an intern at Instagram, and I'm going to follow the next projects or work that I have done. And no, 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 previous one.
But the next one is a particular questions.
Oh yeah, but I'm missing the yeah. There are two of them. Yeah. Okay. Uh, and after that, you also need to mention the role. What have you done, or what have you did in the job? Basically, you need to give like one or two sentences, and not like the description of the project, because you need to describe yourself as fast as possible. Okay. And the second question is the particular questions. So after you describe yourself, or after your interviewer is not like interested in like listen your speech, they are going to ask you about certain projects that you put in your resume or about hypothetical situations. Okay, next one. Hello, hello. Yeah, this is the same that I was saying about yourself. Okay, and the particular questions, there are also a structure to how to answer these questions. For example, let's give an example. Maybe your interviewer is going to ask you, like, tell me about a time you lead a team through a difficult situation. So this is a very particular question, right? So he's interested in like know about more a situation that you face in the past. So to answer this kind of questions, the schema to answer is it is called STAR, and STAR is like the I don't know how to say abbreviation. Um, well, the abbreviation, I guess, of situation, task, action, and result. Okay, so let's explore what is this STAR. The first one is the situation. And the situation, you need to start by talking about the situation you were in. And you give to tell about the context of the situation. For example, let's say that I'm giving a dummy example. When I was in high school, I used to be the project manager of my computer engineering class, and we were facing a problem because we didn't know how to agree in the database schema. Okay, this is the situation, and I give you the context, right? The context was I was in a class, and we were having problems because we didn't agree in the database schema, right? Okay, that's the situation. And the task is what you were trying to achieve from the situation. Basically, the task was to migrate, well, not, let's say, to model a database to push millions of users, right? We were trying like to achieve that in the task. Okay, so the interviewer is not aware about the situation and the task that you were going like to achieve, right? So now you need to say or mention about the action. What have you done to like show that, in this case, leadership, right? And for example, returning to our example, I can say like to solve these disagreements about the schema, we set up a meeting and each of the persons tried to discuss their ideas. We did brainstorming about the different trade-offs of the database schema, and we end up in a general schema that all of the teams agreed. And that's the action, right? The action is, as the word said, how or what you did to solve the situation and the task. And finally, you need to say the result. The result is basically summarizes what you learn and the results of your decision. Again, to our example, finally, I know that if we had if we were going to face another disagreement with another topic in the project, I could set up a meeting and sit down all the members of my team and discuss the trade-offs of any future idea. So this is like, oh, okay, cool, no? So the interviewer was aware of, okay, what you done, what wanted you to do, what the action did you take on that situation, and what was the result, right? So any questions in this part? I guess no. Okay, cool. So we can continue.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Cool. Manuel?
Yes.
Cool. So this is the behavioral part. Remember, at most, like, try to answer this question as fast as possible. So the next section is not the most, well, yeah, it's the most important part, right? The coding part. So next one, please. What is the coding question? Basically, as I was saying at the beginning of the presentations, the coding part is the interviewer is going to give you a problem, and you need to solve the problem in a very specific way, because I I know that most of the people want like to code the problem. Oh yeah, I know how to do this, but this is not the way that you need to proceed to solve the problem. Again, there is a schema, steps that you need to follow, and the steps are listen, clarify, think, code, test, and bugs. And let's discuss the first one, listen. Okay, cool. So yeah, basically they're going to give you a brief description about the problem, and here try not to miss any important information. You can take mental notes, or you can ask your interviewer if you can take notes and I'm not sure where you're doing your interview, but you can take notes. Well, you can ask to take notes in your paper, in your Google Documents, or in the whiteboard. And this is important because maybe there are problems that are like very, very large, have a lot of like special cases that the interviewer is giving you in the problem. Maybe because you're nervous, but you are going to miss that cases, so that important information, and you don't want to miss it because maybe there is like a little special case that can give you the correct answer, right? And so yeah, this is the first one, listen. And the second one, clarify. So until this point, until you need like to speak aloud. And what I mean by speak aloud, everything that you are thinking in your mind, you need to spit it out. Why? Because an interview, it's a very complicated process to your interviewer to know what you're talking about, right? So maybe your mind has like, oh, okay, I can reverse this string and I can like maybe swap these bits and it's going to work. But it's in your mind, and your interviewer is not going to know what you're talking about. So yeah, everything, basically everything that comes out of your mind, pick it. And okay, uh, continuing with the second part, this is the part of clarify. After you got the problem, maybe you are going to have like questions, right? What is the clarify part? So the first part is think about each cases. Oh, you don't need to assume things. You need to always ask, because for example, if you assume things, maybe you are complicated the problem by yourself because you're assuming cases that are not going to happen. For example, let's say that I want, I'm not sure, deal with a string, and maybe the interviewer is only interested in lower cases, right? And maybe in your mind you're assuming, no, okay, it's lower and upper cases, right? So this is like always ask about edge cases and never assume things. The second point is representation of the data. Let's give an example. Let's say that my question is about a binary tree. And maybe the interviewer is going to give me a point to a leaf, not the point to the root of my binary uh, tree, right? And because I didn't ask what the interviewer is going to give me, I'm going to get the answer wrong, right? So this is important to think in my to ask about. Okay, so you're giving me this, and what is the representation of the data? And this is like, oh, okay, cool. I'm giving you a pointer, I'm giving you a string, a vector, and so on. Okay, the next point is the number of elements. This is important because, for example, there are algorithms that perform better for bigger inputs, right? And let's say that I assume that, okay, I'm interviewing for Google, right? And maybe they're going to have like millions of cases, well, millions of inputs. Maybe that's not the case. So yeah, that's why you need to ask about also the number of elements that you're going to deal in the problem. And the fourth point is, can you use extra memory? This is a very common topic because there are like a lot of algorithms that can be solved very easily using extra memory, right? And maybe that's not the main point of the problem. The main point of the problem maybe is like to not use extra memory to do or to solve the problem in a very, I would like say, more interesting way. And yeah, as about this. The fifth point, try to give a review about what you understood and repeat with your own words. Okay, cool. So now you got like all the information that we already mentioned before, but maybe, well, you need to be sure that the things that you understood, it was the main part that your interviewer wanted you to solve, right? So maybe I was my interviewer gave me a problem like to reverse a string. Maybe for him, reverse it means like reverse only by words, not reverse only by uh, I don't know, another concept about reverse. And I didn't understand very well what he was trying me like to do. Maybe I was trying like to reverse the words and reverse the words in a sentence, and maybe he only wanted like to reverse the words. And if you don't ask or repeat again the problem with your own words, maybe you are going to miss like uh, what the interviewer really wanted you to do, right? So that's why it's a good idea to do this. And finally, if you don't even understand a concept that the problem says, ask again. Like, for example, let's say that I need to sort by lexicographical order, and maybe I'm not sure about what lexicographical order is. Uh, yeah, don't be shy and ask about like, what does it mean? And if you're understanding, ask again. Next one, please.
I only want to add that another way to
Okay.
clarify is using examples. Usually, the examples that the interviewer gives you is not really relevant or is like the yeah, it's not really useful for you. It's like the common case. So you can start putting examples and you say, okay, if I have this input, this could be the output. It's kind of repeat with your own words, but repeat with your own examples. So in this case, you can say, as I said, with this input, this is the output, and the interviewer will say, yeah, this is the output, or the interviewer will say, no, this is not the output. The output need to be this because of this, and this. So this it is another way to clarify using examples.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's continue with the flow. So we know the problem, we clarify the problem, we understood the problem. Cool. Now, what's the next step? We need to think, right? Cool. And to think, there is again like if you got like multiple solutions, it is better. But again, think aloud. So you can say something like, okay, I got like multiple solutions. We can solve like this problem in this situation by using this, or this. And the more solutions you give, the smarter you look. Remember that you only got 1 hour, like to demonstrate that you are a really good fit for the company, and also that you're very smart, right? And if you get like multiple solutions, you need to mention the trade-offs of your solutions. For example, let's say that my first solution it was like in a linear time, but it requires a lot of space. And my second solution is going to be like I'm not sure quadratic, but it's not going to use space, right? And you need like to ask your interviewer like what do you think about this or this? Which should I use? And maybe he's going to use to say like, oh, okay, the one that it doesn't use like memory is going to fit for a solution because let's say that our problem runs in I don't know in a very slow server, and this is like, oh, okay, cool, right? And after that also you need to be aware and mention the complexity of your solution. And this is important because, well, you need to be aware, let's say that you are like solving a very complex problem. And maybe there is like, oh, well, but my solution is like quadratic. And and maybe you can like start thinking about a better solution to like reduce the complexity of your algorithm. And again, if you don't have like a good solution or the correct solution, you can like start uh, thinking and give like, oh, okay, I got this idea, and maybe you're not going to like go to the optimized solution or the final solution right now, but you know that it's a brute force, right? So maybe you can say like, okay, I know that this is a brute force, and right now I cannot like go to the final solution, but maybe the brute force is going to give you like hints or information about how you can optimize and lead to the final solution. Also, here is very important that when you are like thinking and speaking with your interviewer, maybe it's going to give you hints. This is not 100% because it depends on the company. As far as I know, in I guess Facebook doesn't give you any feedback, so he's only like taking notes, and you are solving the problem by yourself. But for example, I guess another other companies give you like hints. And what a hint is, well, basically, let's say that you are in this step, right? And you are saying, okay, I got like the brute force solution, and but let's say that you're not using another information that the problem is saying, right? And maybe your interviewer is going to say, oh, okay, but maybe if you just you use the information that I give you, maybe it's going to give you I don't know, less space in your problem. Have you like tried to put that information in your problem? And you're going to say like, oh, okay, he's giving me hints about what I could be missing to solve the problem, like in an easier way, in the correct way, right? So yeah, this is like in the think part. This is a conversation in most of the interviews, and it's important that it is a conversation because also here you need like to take the feedback about what your interviewer is giving you, and the feedback on the hints. And yeah, any more comments, Manuel?
Well, only I said more than the company, the feedback. Well, the hints of the interviewer depends of the interviewer. I have received hints in my interviews at Facebook, so I think depends more on that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Okay, so now you know the problem, you clarify the problem, and you got like a solution. What is the next part? Code it, right? Cool. So what do you need to do in this step? Well, basically, you need to create a code that is understandable by humans. So what does that mean? Initially, you need to use good variables names. So maybe don't don't write your variables like
Oh, Gober,
IG.
sorry, I
Okay,
will stop you. We have a
okay,
question about the last slide.
okay.
Uh, is it okay to ask for hints?
Okay. I'm again. This is going to be like it's going to depend on the interviewer because maybe you are going to ask for a hint and your interviewer is not to gave you anything. Uh, yeah, you could try it, and it's not to be like a penalized, but I wouldn't like ask directly for a hint. I have like a very I would like to say smart phrase to ask for a hint. And the thing that I used to say is, oh, okay, I cannot like get to the final solution. Am I missing something? And your interviewer is going to say like, oh, maybe you are missing this part or this part. And this is like, oh, okay, right? Because maybe asking for a hint directly, it could say like, it could be, I know, I'm not sure if it could be rude, but yeah, try to, if you want to uh, get a hint from your interview and try to um, ask it in a different way, like I said.
I only want to add that obviously it's better if you don't ask for hints, but it's better that you ask for hints than you who is the word, who is the translation, like you don't need to be quiet. I mean, if you are stuck with the problem, it's better if you ask for hints. You can say something like Gober said, or directly, okay, I think I'm stuck. Can you give me another hint? So, but don't be quiet. Is the worst part because probably you will be wasting time or something, and you need to um, use your time as better as possible. So don't be afraid of ask hints if you are stuck, but try to solve the problem with hints. Probably another good tip is like putting you like a limit. Like I can try to, if in some moment I'm stuck, I will try to think about the problem during 30 seconds. And if I don't get the solution, I will ask for hints, something like that. Okay, we can return to the next slide.
Okay, cool. So again, continue to the coding part. So yeah, use good variable names and try to not to be too explicit. I know explicit variable names is better, but also if you are like using that variable again and again in your code, you don't want like to write counter to reverse word or to reverse paragraph. No? Maybe you can like discuss it like I know that I could write this like counter to reverse word, but I'm going to abbreviate it as CPS, right? But again, you're thinking aloud and you are like saying the interviewer that you know how to write good variable names, but you're abbreviated because of the length of the program, right? And the second part is let's say that you need a utility function or additional functions. And maybe the main part of the interview is not to write these functions. And maybe you can return to write them if you have time in at the end of the solution. So you can say like, okay, I need an additional function, let's say to count the numbers of elements in an array. But let's assume that this function works and exists, and we can return to implement it at the end of my solution, right? Because maybe you're going to like take more time to write also the other or the auxiliary function, and you can say like I said, and the interviewer is be aware that okay, he's not aware that needs a utility function, and he's going to write it at the end, right? And the third one is keep it as simple as possible. Yeah, as the as the advice says, and try not to make too complicated code because it's not going to be a very straightforward to your interviewer to understand it, right? Also, you need to organize your space. If you're using a Google Doc, a whiteboard, a paper, a white paper, uh, you need like to be very organized where you put the things. Because if you're like solving multiple problems or you're like uh, debugging the test that debug is the next step, you're going if you don't like organize your space, you're going to run out of space, right? And maybe you need like to use multiple white white papers, or you will run out of space in your whiteboard. Maybe that's going to be a problem because you're like, oh well, when where is this part of the code, and I need like to swap or maybe erase because it doesn't fit in the whiteboard. So yeah, be very organized in this in your space. Finally, remember that a brute force it's better than nothing. And where we are mentioning this because there are like interviews that are very very complicated, and maybe it's like let's say that the correct solution is a dynamic programming solution, but you don't understand like what is like the correct way to solve it in the let's say in the dynamic solution, right? And again, it's better like to give one solution, in this case the product solution, instead of like okay, this candidate didn't solve the problem, I didn't write code, so this is like a no a red flag, right? uh, any more comments, Manuel?
Um, well, first, we have another question, which was if it's okay using any, well, if there is a preferred language for interviews.
Okay, basically I would like to say that there is no like the a preferred language for interviews, but there are like a very common ones that it is easier you to interview. right? Because I would like to say that it's like JavaScript, Java, Python, C, and C++. And why is this? Because most of the persons know that kind of like programming languages. And it's easier you to express the ideas and for them to read the code, right? But again, this is not like a fixed part because you can code in any language that you prefer. I'm just saying that for them it's easier to understand that kind of code. And again, it's like better to code in like common programming languages because maybe let's say that you're programming in, I don't know, Lisp or Haskell. The syntax is like very confusing and very like esoteric, and it's going like to be a difficult part to explain like certain parts of your or your program if your interviewer don't know about like certain parts of the language.
I only want to
I
add
would like
that.
to add something.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead, Sergio.
I just wanted to add that some companies actually limit you to some set of languages. Like Google just limits you to use Python or C or C++ or Java, I think. Those are your only options if you want to interview with Google. But most of the companies don't limit you, but like Google does, so maybe other company does.
Yeah, I want to add something like that. Also depends of the position that you are applying for. For example, if you are applying for front-end engineer, you need to code in JavaScript. That's mandatory. I think if you are applying for certain data science or machine language, you need to use Python. I'm not totally aware of that, but I have that idea. And also, it sometimes depends
Python
of
or
the.
R.
Wait me, I want to add something else. Something else that also depends of the interviewer and your resume. Some interviewers say that, well, saw in your resume that you know C++, so they want you to code in C++. But they are only a few of them. I know some cases from my friends that the interviewers say, "Oh, okay, it's okay that you know Python, but I say that I saw that you know C++. Can you code it in C++?" But it's only a few cases. What something else do you want to add? No?
No.
Okay. And about the organize your space, I also want to add that as we told you, there are on-site interviews and remote interviews. In the remote interviews, you have the advantage that you use an online editor, so it's better. Okay, I don't know what is the question. Okay, it's better. Well, you have the advantage of you can reorganize your code and putting lines between your lines if you're missing something or something like that. That's an advantage of the remote interview, but the problem is that is also something that the interviewers evaluate, like how many mistakes you made or something like that, and that's also most likely to see in the on-site interview. Why? Because you have your whiteboard or your piece of sheet and you need to code there. So if you start writing your code and you're missing something, you need to erase or you need to put lines to like to redirect your code or something like that. So one advice that I can give you is when you code in a whiteboard, you can also put like one line between each line if you need to add something else. That also depends of the well which part of the code is or how many space do you have. Because as I told you, I have code in a whiteboard of 1 meter length and others of 3 meters length. So it's different space and you need to organize your space in different ways. So it's something else that you need to take in consideration when you start coding. The best way to do this is practice. When you solve your problems, you can practice in your well, in a whiteboard or in a piece of sheet. We have another question. Are on-sites only for full-time or also internships? It depends of the company and the COVID. For example,
Yeah.
Microsoft, the on-site interview in the final round is for both full-time and intern. With COVID, no one makes on-site interviews for obvious reasons. In Facebook, the on-site interview is only for full-time employees, or if they have interviewers in your city in the time that you want to do the final round, well, the second interview, sorry.
Yeah, also
Uh,
it depends.
yes,
For example, both of my interviews at Microsoft were on site, my first and my last round. So yeah, it's going to change a lot. But the general rule is the ones that Manuel said.
yeah. As we told you in the previous lesson, that depends if the company makes an event in your school and can use the classrooms there, and well, if the company has offices at your city, etc. But the general rule is that the on-site interview is mostly focused in the full-time employees for the final round. Uh, Anyone wants to add something else or have another question? Yeah, you get the travel, and also, well, not exactly the travel. For example, Sergio makes the final run at Microsoft in Monterrey, and I do in the offices here at Santa Fe. So, but at least I got like candies and not exactly a food, but kind of lunch there in Microsoft. So, yeah, at least you have the travel. I think we can continue.
Okay, cool. So the next part is test. So again, now you got your code, cool. But this is not where your in the part of the coding ends, right? You need to test that your solution works, right? So how do you test your code? Okay, initially you need to use the edge cases to need your code, right? Remember that the part that we were saying about like clarifying and asking about edge cases, okay, but you're going to use that cases right now. So basically, let's say that you said that I could have like empty strings, strings that have like very weird characters. What else? A string with only spaces. And this is like the edge cases that you need to test like first, right? Because maybe they are the easy ones that you are going to, I missed this edge case, and you can put a like an if, right? And now you need the second point is you need to test using simple tests. Why simple tests? Because for example, if you are like testing with a very long test, you're going to like get in trouble in terms of time because you need like to test all your code like step by step. Also, again here, how did you going to test? Basically, you don't need like to write like a unit testing. The way that you need to test is basically that okay, you begin to read your code and like uh, say how the input is changing through your code. Like, let's say that okay, that I got my initial string and my string says dog, and I pass this function and this function does this, and now my input is this. Okay, cool. And finally I return the output, and the output is going to be this. So this case works, and you go through all of your cases. And Sergey, you got your mic open? Okay, cool, thanks. And this is the way that you are going to test it. And it's easier to test like simple cases because you're going to spot books very quickly. Because let's say that you got a very complex case and you're going to spot the book like at the end of the test, right? Or the case. And that is going to consume like a very long time. And again, if you got books, I guess that's the next point. But if you got bugs, you need like to fix the code, like to mitigate those bugs, right? And also there are another kind of tests that you need like to be aware in the test part. The first test that you will also need to be aware is the stress test. You can like simulate a lot of users, and let's try to understand how it's going to perform. The second one is the scale testing. So how does it handle inputs with like a very large size? And the final one is test cross-functional testing. This is not a very common one, and basically it says that how does it impact other parts of the code base? Maybe you are like integrating this pair of the code in like another system, and how is it going like to operate or to interact with other parts? But yeah, this is not like a super the three tests that I mentioned. There are like extra points because the main part of the interview is like to test all the code that you already written. Not like to simulate another test, but again, this is like extra points. If you have time and you know how to perform this kind of tests, go ahead. More comments, Mano?
No, I don't
I
think
have
so.
one.
Yeah, go ahead.
On this part, recently due to COVID, most of the interviews are being remote, right? So some companies have started to ask you to test your code locally. So actually compile and run your code with some test cases just to verify that first your code is well written, and second that your code works at least with the test cases that the interviewer has given you, or maybe some of the tests that you have thought of. Yeah, that was my only comment.
Okay, so let's continue with bugs. Again, as I was saying, the testing part. Did you find any bugs? Okay, you need to fix them, right? And it's better to you to look for bugs instead of like your interviewer spot for them, because the kind of person that are going to interview you, they are like I would like to say they are experts in their fields. So maybe they're like very good at the programming language that you are using, right? And maybe he spotted a bug, and this is like, oh well, uh, he didn't like notice a bug even when he was trying like to test in the code, right? And again, here there is, well, this is going to depend on your interviewer. Well, maybe he's going to say something like, "Are you sure that your code works?" And this is maybe a hint you to check again the algorithm, because maybe if the person is saying you that, it's because he spotted something that it's wrong in your code, right? And he's not going to say you, but he wants you to check again your code, right? And maybe you can say like, okay, let me check it again, and then maybe you really miss something. Also, if you spot the bug, it's going to be good points. Why is going to be good points? Because you are taking feedback. Taking feedback means that, okay, I'm not like it's not jealous. It's well, let's say that that you're open to comments of your peers, and you're taking those comments and applying it in your work. In this case, your interview, right? So yeah. Any more comments?
Yeah, I want to add that remember that all the comments that the interviewer said are to help you. The only exception is the one that Gober said. Sometimes the interviewer asks, "Are you sure that this is okay or is well or solves the problem?" Uh, in a few cases, the interviewer only say that to know if you are sure about what you do, what do you did. So you need to just take another look of your code, probably make another test, and if you didn't notice any problem, you need to say, yeah, I think it's okay. That's not in all the cases. Most of the cases is because the interviewer noticed some problem and you need to fix it. But in a few cases, probably it's only to test you if you are confident about your answer. And oh well, yeah. Remember that yesterday we mentioned that in your well, usually in your on-site interviews, you have four or more rounds in the same day. Well, one after the other. Okay, all the feedback that the interviewers give you during this interview, you need to take attention and don't make the same errors in the next interviews. Why? Because the interviewers talk between them in the uh, how do you say cover during the free time or
Oh yeah, basically they have like a very small time to like share feedback about the candidates. So maybe they are going to like share a document, and maybe he's going to write something like, "Oh, this person doesn't take too much." Maybe your interviewer is going to say, "You should take more," and your next interview, in your next interview, you need to talk more, right? Because that person already written written the information in the log, right? So that means that okay, he will apply the feedback in the next round or in the next interview.
yeah. And again, if the interviewer gives you another comment like, okay, this person uh, uh, didn't well or didn't check the empty case, for example, and the interviewer said when he was reviewing your code, oh, you're missing to check the empty case, and in the next interview you make the same error. This is like really bad points or really a big cross in your evaluation. Why? Because you are not taking the feedback of your previous interviews. You are not learning about your errors. So take this in consideration and be careful with that. We have a question. If I know the problem, should I say I have seen it before?
Yeah, let's. You need to be honest. And why is this? Because, for example, what is the main point of like solving a problem that you already solved, right? Maybe you know the solution and you're going to solve the problem like very fast, and maybe your interviewer is going to know that you already know the solution and you didn't say anything, right? So, well, again, this is like it depends on the interviewer, but maybe this is going to cut the process of you interviewing with at least this round of with the company. So yeah, it's better to be honest if you already know the solution of the problem.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, if you want to didn't say anything and make like you are foolish and say, oh, we can start with that and then do that and then you give the right answer. Okay, if you want to do that, is in your own. But if the interviewer notice, because I have had in my mock interviews people that knows the problem and try to cheat, and it's like sometimes it's obvious that they know the problem, and in that moment it's like, okay, yeah, this is a big cross. You are banned from the company. Well, not exactly banned, but it's like really bad points that that gives you if they notice that. It's like you cheat in the exam. You can do that, right? But if the teacher notice that, you are they will fail you in the subject. So, in my opinion, it doesn't say anything. You can be honest. For example, in one of my interviews, I know not exactly the problem, but I know how to solve it. Like they give me the problem and I have answered. In fact, in one of my Facebook interviews, I have answered that problem before, but not in the same way. Like my problem was with list, and this problem right now was with arrays. So I said to the interviewer, "Oh, I solved a problem like this, and it's solved with a heap." and the interviewer said, "Oh, okay, it's fine. Solve it again." So in some moments, it's better be honest. Honestly, the second time that I solved the problem, I think I do it worse than the first time because was with a race, but that well, I got my offer in that with that problem, so probably be honest gives me good points in my evaluation. I'm not totally sure. Oh, we have a we have a comment. The correct pronunciation of notice. Yeah,
No,
probably
no,
as
noticed probably, but I mean, everybody understood what you
okay.
meant. You know.
Yeah, sorry. Our English is not perfect, and well, in fact, it's something that we want to talk with you. You don't need to have well the best English to apply, but you need to practice your English. If you don't have uh, lessons in your school, probably you can find another external school to practice or to take lessons. It's something really important to practice because it's the international language. Yeah, thanks for the comment. I will try to improve that. And we have another comment from Pablo. I think I will reply. I will copy the comment in Facebook because I think they are the only ones that doesn't seen days. Okay, this is a story. Gobert, do you want to read this story?
Okay, talking about bugs and feedback, I think some feedback could be bad. That's also a red flag. Story. In my Microsoft interview, I was using JavaScript porque bandita cool usa JavaScript, and I was using the triple comparison cause JavaScript, a good practice. She corrected me with the usual case. Another cause, I guess she wasn't familiar with JavaScript. I kind of shocked and we lost about 2-3 minutes to get back on track. I think JavaScript slash TypeScript is still cool for interviews to be honest. Just that one went bad.
I think I have a
Cool.
similar case because in my Facebook interview, in the one, in fact, the one that I told you, my interviewer, I think codes in Python, and some things that I did in C++ was not, uh, well, he was not familiarized with that. So you, in sometimes, yeah, you can use any coding language that you want, but probably you need to make clarifications or something like that, or specify. For example, in C++, you can use a heap as a map, but in Python the map is a hash table directly. So you need to clarify. Okay, I'm using a mat because in C++ is coding as a heap, and 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 you because it's make as a red black tree and has the average time of log n and the lowest element is at the top, etc. So if the interviewer is not related with your programming language, you can make these kind of clarifications that you know that are not universal and are important. Okay, any other comment, question?
Sorry to interrupt, but I would also like to add that well, it might not happen to you, but it happens to me that I in my resume I like Python like in my most used language, but the person who was going to make my one of my last interviews at Microsoft was this senior, like the head of the team, and he only knew C++, so he demanded kind of that all the code was going to read in C++. So um, although I like to do my interviews in Python, I do recommend that you know at least the basics of C++ because I think it's the most common language used in the for all people also. So just to be aware that also that this only happens to me once, but it happens. So I just saying to you so you don't be like I hadn't touched C++ like in a lot of time, and it took me like in a moment of weakness, uh, but fortunately I did remember the basics, and I went through that, and I just like I just clarified to the interviewer like, well, I have not been using C++ for that much time, but I remember this, and I will assume that this function has this name. If it does not have this name, I'm sorry. Could you tell me if you remember which was the name of this method? And the method was the length of an array. He told me like, yeah, of course, you can assume that this name means I put size, and I think it is size, but yeah, just to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's another good comment. Remember the part of the code when you let me go back. Okay, the part of use imaginary functions and implement them later also applies for the pre-built functions. I always, well, I'm a person that has bad memory, especially with the specific syntax. When I code, I usually have the C++ reference opened. So in my interviews, I also say, okay, I don't remember the exact name of this function, but I know that exists this function that makes this, and probably the name is this one, but probably no. And sometimes in the interviewer now said, "Oh, yeah, that's the correct name," or "No, the name is other one," or directly it doesn't matter. So the important part is always say what do you want to do with each function, and that could be also nice to the interviewer and to your feedback. Any other comment or question? Okay, I think we can continue, Glover.
Okay. So yeah, you reached this part of the interview. You solved your coding part, well, your coding problem. You clarify this, and so on. Cool. But the interview doesn't end there. Now you got to ask anything about any topic that you're really interested in to one of the persons that work for that company that you would like to work, right? So this is like a very, I would like to say, important part because it can show you how much interest do you have to see how the company works internally, right? Next one, please. So there are like three kind of questions that you could ask. The first one is the general one, the technical one, and the cultural one. The general one is more like it could say like, oh, how is like to work in there, or maybe how did you like manage the times in like to give a good performance in the company. The technical one is, for example, if you know, let's say that I'm interviewing for Netflix, right? So maybe I'm very interested in like know how the are you continue watching this works. So maybe I could say, like, oh, I'm very interested in how did you implement it. What even, and this is like a discussion, right? You can say, oh, why did you use this instead of this, and you have like the opportunity to know that kind of information from direct sources, right? Maybe it's going to be a great experience because you can apply like those advices like to your own work. And the final type of questions is the cultural one. And the cultural one, maybe you're like very interested in like how maybe like how does Amazon fit for Mexican persons? Like, do you have more Mexicans in your company? How do you treat like persons with another culture, with another accent, and that kind of stuff, right? And it's important to make questions because maybe you can say like your interviewer is gonna say to something like, "Do you have any questions for me?" And you're going to say like, "No." And maybe I wouldn't say that it's going to be bad points for you, but it's going to be great if you are very like curious about something related to the company, right? And next one, please.
I only want to add that one
Oh yeah.
general question that I always made is the one that, do you have any feedback for me? Most of the interviewers said, no, I can share the feedback with you because it's the general rule. But a couple of them have given me feedback about my interview, so it was really worth asking that. You can take in consideration, but probably most of the people would say, no, I can give you feedback. Do you
We
want to
got a
continue?
question.
We have a question.
Yeah, okay. Is it okay to ask what he's working on, or is it that too generic? Uh, I would like to say that they are going to give you what he's working on at the beginning of the interview. Maybe he's going to present himself like, okay, my name is Pedrito. I work on, I don't know, Google Meetings. And that's all right. So maybe like you want to ask more questions about the information that you already got at the beginning of the interview. I'm not very sure about your question.
Well, I only want to add that the cracking the coding interview, the book that is like the Bible for the interviews, has an examples of questions like what is working at that company or what did you choose that company. There is a kind of let's say problem or difficulty when you make that questions because are kind of mainstream. Like most of the interviewees say that or ask that. It's okay if you ask that, but also another way to put your how do you say dejar tu marca, dejar tu huella.
Leave your brand. I'm not sure if that's
I'm
the
not totally sure,
literal
but well,
translation.
Like
that
get
comes.
an impression, keep an impression on her or he.
Yeah, that's another way to get an impression. Why? Because if you make, we will talk about the technical interviews and the cultural ones. But if you make a good question, that's another way that to the interviewer to remind you. For example, if you ask something really specific about the company, he would say, or he or she will say, "Oh, that person is really interested in what we do, or is really interested in joining the company." So it's another way to earn points with the interviewer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, sorry.
no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to say a little more. Yes, and that's really really true because I have this friend, as I told the yesterday, uh, that he was calling this really hard problem that he was at Facebook. Facebook has this like me that if you don't do at least two answers or two problems, you are not going to get to the next step. And he got this interviewer that he get a really hard question. Well, he was about dynamic programming, but yeah, at the end he did get the solution, but he only get one. But yeah, uh, but in the asking question, he knew at the beginning because he told that he was at Facebook and he was from no, because in Facebook you get like from anticipation who is going to get who is going to give you the interview, so you could get a little stalker and find him. And my friend did that, and he find out his LinkedIn and his Facebook account, and discovered that this guy was from Africa and he was working in Facebook from X years. And he prepared this really good question that he was asking that what he was going of if he was participating in the Facebook project of get internet to all the people, and because he was from Africa, if he was going to to do something about that. And the guy was like really excited about that question because he was really into that because he was really happy or he was going to help his community back in Africa. So this guy started to talk a lot and he extended the interview a little more than he was supposed to just because he get excited about the question. And my friend really believes that question helps him a lot to get to get to the final round on Facebook. So yeah, that if you could find the guy who is going to get your interview, get prepared really good questions, that's going to be the difference between you and another guy that also nails the coding part.
Do you have any other comment? Anyone?
No, I guess no.
Okay, Carlos share. Let me reply with this. Some examples of questions. Those are really good, and we have another examples in the notes of the slides. You can review it later, or I can share you while Gover comments the next part. Let me continue.
Okay, so basically, if you are like really into technology, uh, you can know about more about how the internal parts of those companies work, because most of the fan companies have their own research pages or their engineering pages, right? So also this part is going to help you in as a professionals. For example, I usually review Facebook research and Netflix and Google research about what they're doing, and basically they are going to post like, oh, okay, we got this problem about how to scale Google BigQuery to millions of queries in a second or something like that, right? And they're going to post you like not the old information about how the system works, but the general path, right? And maybe when you reach your final uh, day of the interview, you get very curious about, oh, okay, but maybe you use like, I don't know, this kind of like database. Why didn't you use a relational database for your solution? And that person could like solve that question that you already know how like the product works internally, right? And again, this is only for the technical part. And as I was saying, these like kind of ideas of how the big companies are solving these kind of problems are going to help you in your next job, even if it's not in a fun company, because if they're like solving that kind of problem for millions of users, maybe it's going to fit you for the problem that you are going to face in any type of work, right? And also, we would like to share with you uh, a workflow for all the things that I was like talking about the interview. You would like to take more about that, Sergio? It's your workflow. Can you share it, Emmanuel?
Yeah, wait me a second. Oh, no, this one.
Yeah.
Can you zoom it?
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Is better or more?
Uh, I see the well here. Okay.
Okay, more. Do you want to explain it? Well, it's a workflow diagram. You can check it in our Notion. I think we can share the link in the chat in a few moments. But it's only well as a workflow of everything of this, a kind of cheat sheet that you can have during your interview. Do you? Okay, this is for.
Yeah, basically all the information that I was already saying you in the last hour, it's like compressed in this diagram. So if you have like any questions, you can follow this flowchart, and that's all.
Just one last comment about last questions. Just remember that it is very important because even if you had a really great coding interview, if you don't show this interest to the company, then the company will say the same. I mean, this guy is not interested in my company, so why would I hire him, right? So even if you had a really great coding part, just
Oh
remember it is
yeah,
very important.
I got a story that a guy was trying to get a job well, I'm not gonna say the company, but he was like at the end of the second round, in the part like, "Do you have any questions for me?" He was like, "Oh no, I'm not. I don't like too much your product." And obviously, he aced the interviews because he solved all the problems in the correct like way, but he didn't get the offer because he wasn't excited about like the product that he was going to work on. So yeah, try to be careful about this part.
This is mostly important for in the, I would say, in interviews like the final round at Microsoft. If you don't know, during your final round at Microsoft, your interviewers will be the managers of you. Well, not exactly your managers, but it's people from the teams that you will be working on. So in that case, you need to impress that people because one of them will hire you. It's not like, for example, in Facebook, random people interview you and at the end they make the match between the projects and the interns. But in Microsoft, the people that wants interns in his team is the people that is making the interviews. So you need to impress the people, and if you say, as Gober said, this is not for me or I don't like your product, it's like, okay, you don't want to work here. Do you have any other questions or any other comments? If not, well, we have 15 minutes of lesson. Then the next part is talking about the topics in the interview. I think it's not enough time. What do you think, Sergio, to start?
No, I think it's just 15 minutes. I think it will be like we will be like running. So I'm not sure. Why
I
don't
think
we
we
use
can make
democracy?
a couple of more comments about questions and interviews. Um, if you don't know where to search information, you can send a message to Gover because he knows a lot of the or where the companies share information or where to ask information about the technical part. One funny topic is Gover, for one of my Facebook interviews, Gover mentioned me the um, Storm project was called, if I'm not wrong. It's a project that Facebook makes, like it's literally they shut down a data center and try to analyze or monitorize the answer to that shutdown, how the company answered to that. And one of my interviews was with a person that works in infrastructure with Facebook and was really like a nice match to ask that question. We have a question. Anyone want to read it?
Okay, I will. Okay, so I have a question. Algorithms and leadership abilities are the main points tested in the interview for the tech companies. Are these related to the kind of job do in the companies, or it's completely different? Okay. Do you want to answer, Manuel?
Okay, I would say that it depends. In some cases, the project is like nothing to see with algorithms or something like that. Or no, I would say that not directly. Like it's not. Yeah, you will go to your internship and they would say, "Oh, you need to apply a binary search here." But the algorithms could help it. For example, during the internship with Sergio, for one of his tasks, he applies some algorithms to improve the uh, his project, let's say. In some cases, it's not like directly. You don't see that, but I would say that the way to solve the problems help you during your internship. Like you have this problem, how do you solve it? I would say that it's not during your internship you use another abilities like the infrastructure part or how do you connect one one service with other, something like that. But yes, the algorithms is helpful for you. And also, I would say that the think a lot part is also really useful during your internship because in your, well, at least for me, during my meetings with my manager or with my peers, I need to get to have this kind of conversation of how to improve that, how do you solve this problem, why do you want to solve this problem in that way, what are uh, the trade-offs of if of each solution and something like that.
Also, if you're like really curious about this kind of part, if you really are going to use that kind of algorithms in your day-to-day job, Nutria posted, or Facebook page posted a very interesting article that it's called something like how coding interviews related to day-to-day job, something like that. You can read it. It is going to show you like how much you are going to deal with these kind of algorithms and in what kind of like situations. And yeah, it's super, super interesting.
Also, remember that as an intern, companies assume that you know nothing about the technology. So it is okay if you enter as an intern and you don't know anything about the technology because you're going to learn there. And that will be evaluated by the company. So the speed that you have to learn something and then how you use what you have learned before, etc., etc. So if you're going to a full-time job, then they will assume that you already know the technologies. But um, anyways, I don't think that's like a really much of a problem for those big tech companies because they want to hire smart people, right? What I always say is that it can take you like at most 1 month to learn a new technology, but to learn how to think can take you years. So this is what companies are looking for. So yeah, just to take it in consideration.
And as a Carlos mentioned in YouTube, design pattern is something that is used more in algorithms. Sorry, is used more than algorithms in your job. Is the common rule. In my case, I didn't use a lot design patterns, but I think Gober. Oh well, in the Gober's internship, he stole something that he was learned from another
No, I didn't.
company.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
That's something also useful. Obviously, as more as you know, as more that you can apply in other aspects of your work. And the second part of the question was, do you have responsibilities where you apply other what? Where you apply other knowledge like front end, back end, mobile development, or anything? Yeah, that also depends of the or your project. In my case, I work more in back end. I did a little bit of front end. I was not really comfortable with that, but well, I have a peer that knows a lot about front end and she helped me a lot. So yeah, you apply a lot of things. I would say that data structures, yes, design patterns, yes, algorithm, yes, front end, back end. Well, in general, infrastructure or architecture, yes. And we have another question. How different are the coding problems for those of you who applied of internship versus those of you who applied for full-time positions? Um, uh, Someone wants to answer?
Yeah.
Based on our experience. Oh.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sergio. I'm so sorry.
Okay, just quick answer for my part. Based on our experience, most of the problems are the same in terms of algorithms, but um, like Microsoft has a little bit of a different process for full-time employees, um, because they ask questions about design patterns and system designs, etc. And this is not so common for interns. So now you go ahead, Gore.
Oh yeah, I was saying that for full-time positions, it's super probable that you're going to be something related to system design because you are like at the end of your university career, right? You know like about how to implement system and how they work in like the block ways. So they you expect like you to know that part of ready and apply it to build a real system. Let's say they are going to ask you to build, I'm not sure, a second Instagram. And yeah, that's why we're like trying to create a workshop for system design interviews, but it's not ready yet. So I'm so sorry for that.
in some moment. I also want to add that sometimes the interviewer doesn't know to which position are you applying for. And another kind of good tip is clarify that. For example, especially when you are applying for Explorer positions at Microsoft, for example, the people doesn't know about that. Well, sometimes your interviewer doesn't know about that, and they ask you questions that will be probably for intern position, but like you are in your first years of career, so probably doesn't know the topic or something like that. So another tip that you can take yeah, that you can take is clarify to which position are you applying. For example, when you are introducing yourself, you can say, "Oh, my name is Manuel, and I'm applying for an Explorer position because I want to enter to Microsoft. Is evolving the world. I would like to make an impact in the world, etc." But usually, in general, at least for algorithms and data structures, the questions are more or less the same. For full-time positions, you can receive questions like system design or class design. Carlos also added that the coding questions are very similar for full-time interviewer. No, are very similar, but for full-time, the interviewer will weigh more communication skills and the ability to clarify the problem and narrow it down. So you can take that also in consideration. Carlos is a full-time employee at Microsoft, so has more insight than us in that. Any other questions, comments? Well, if there is no more questions, I think that's everything for now. Remember that the next Friday we will have a mock interview demo that you can attend, and you can make your question about the mock interview, etc. And what do you want to expect. And also, if you want to start practicing, you can send us a message. We'll be Carlos said that he's supposed to be working. Yeah, I'm supposed to be studying for my lesson. So probably not all the people is making that is supposed to. Well, as I was saying, attend the mock interview to know what you want to expect in an interview. And if you want to start practicing in a mock interviews, you can send us a message. If you are in the Discord, you need to send a message in the mocks waiting list channel. If you are in YouTube or Facebook, you can send us a message or join in our Discord. And well, in my opinion, the best way to practice for an interview is making a lot of mock interviews. So as soon as you start making mock interviews, as soon as soo- well as
Beso
how
no.
do you say it? As more as you will have. So attend the next Friday to see what you need to expect, and we will continue the next Monday with the rest of this presentation about the topics for your interviews. Only as a reminder, we won't teach you about algorithms or data structures. This will be only what do you will expect for in your interview, like which topics expect. If you want to study about algorithms or data structures, you can attend, I don't know, the algorithms club in your school or some tutorials in internet like HackerRank has the interview preparation kit, I think is the name. You can study also some topics in lead code, etc. We can give you another recommendations in where to study. And that's everything for now. thanks to everyone to attend, and see you the next Friday.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Oh, and thanks, Carlos, for your time.
For those who don't know Carlos, I think he's the full-time employee that is helping us.
Bye bye.